So this audio recording is going to apply to people that are always drawn to emotionally unavailable partners and what you can do to break that cycle. So, by becoming romantically involved with someone who's not available, either emotionally or some kind of other way, is a path that is self-sabotaging. But it has a lot of self-destructive behaviors and it's very difficult to change it. But how can you spot if a potential partner or maybe a love interest is emotionally unavailable? How can you also understand if you yourself is emotionally unavailable? What does that even mean? Right? The phrase emotionally unavailable, we hear it quite often, but it can actually apply to several types of people, and that can range from narcissists, and it can go all the way up to avoidant attached personalities. So what does that mean? It's basically somebody that is closed off to anything that's related whenever they're closed off to anything that relates to intimacy. So these people usually disassociate from their own feelings and they consequently cannot handle other people's feelings. And many people can be in a relationship and still be emotionally unavailable because there can always be an emotional distance. So these types of people are usually disconnected. So these are people that are disconnected from feelings and their behaviors are disconnected. So it could mean that someone who's acting needy and codependent, they can also be disconnected. There's lots of things about that, you know? There's people that can have an anxious attachment style and they can also be codependent in relationships and they can also be disconnected. Instead of avoiding the emotions and leaning into intimacy, people can feel controlled by the emotions and try to fuse it with their partner, but both approaches are unavailable. Okay, emotionally unavailability means to be disconnected, to be an avoidant, to be a codependent, to be anxious. Okay, these are several different labels that fall under this category that can describe people that have intimacy issues, but there's usually one denominator. Okay, usually it's people which their driving force comes out of fear and not out of love. What was I going to say further down? If you're in a relationship with someone who is emotionally unavailable or is disconnected, there's a point in time where you need to make the call and determine whether it's going to lead somewhere or whether it will be a dead-end relationship. So usually dead-end relationships refer to attachments to people who are painfully unattainable. So it's a mismatch type of relationship where two people are on different wavelengths, that is, they think differently, right? And relationships chronically lacking in what both partners may need or want, okay? This leads to emptiness, deprivation, and a lot of suffering, okay? And love doesn't mean that one should self-sacrifice. It's because maybe you hadn't had perhaps a healthy model of what love and support feels like. So you may have grown up to be more susceptible to dead-end relationships because you have perhaps a dysfunctional view of what love is, or perhaps you might even feel that you're not worthy of love. So how do you think these attraction patterns form? And do you think that these things can be changed, who we are attracted to? Well, initially, it has to do with chemistry. Okay, our ability to love intimately and sexually, it unfolds in stages. First, it starts with the attachment that we had with our parents. So our early patterns of relating and attaching to others, if problematic in childhood, it will have a neurological wiring in our brains in childhood, and then it's going to repeat itself in adulthood. So when we grow up with this chemistry that is broken, right, it continues as a loophole going and going and going. So these are types of attractions that deprive us of things. So our conscious self is basically drawn to positive qualities that we're yearning for, but our unconscious mind draws us to the qualities which hurts us most when we were children. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get our unmet childhood needs, we're trying to find a romantic partner to resolve the wounds that we had in our childhood. So often we attract a partner who has qualities that we often dislike, and then we want them to get rid of the exact things we were first drawn to. And this is where the childhood loop comes to play in our adult relationships. Our partner will not fulfill the need we lacked growing up, which would lead to the same familiar conflict that we had in our families and the suffering we experienced as a child. So what happens is we develop instincts that become part of our chemistry, and it points us to the direction of who we find attractive or who we are repulsive of. So say, for example, if you grew up and you didn't have a positive model of what a healthy, loving partnership looks like, it can be quite challenging to know what love really feels like. So as human beings, we generally like what feels familiar. And if there's inconsistency and we're fighting for love and attention, or we endured perhaps some sort of emotional abuse, if that was the way you were brought up, growing up, then subconsciously you are going to keep choosing partners who make you feel the same way. Now, if you're in a relationship with someone who is emotionally unavailable, what I need to say here is that there is chances that you could have a healthy, fulfilling relationship with an emotionally unavailable partner, but both people, they need to develop the goals for a healthy intimacy and connection, and both of these partners need to recognize the loophole that has happened in childhood, understand consciously what's going on, and they both must be equally invested in this process. So if both partners are aware, this is a great opportunity for these two people to grow within the relationship. And it's the only way, because both are equally invested here. And that's the only way that the wounds can get healed, right? Both people need to want to make it work, and their actions need to align with their intentions. So what else do I need to say? I would tell you, how can you rewire everything to make things better? An advice would be, try to date people that are not your usual type. So try to be open on going out on dates with people who are not the usual types that you would date, okay? And you can see how you feel about them. You might get discouraged and don't really like them, but the objective is to be going out with people who may be compatible, even if the romantic chemistry is not there. So what you want to do is, instead of seeing that you're dating someone, why don't you see it as connecting to the other person? It's all about connections. Your goal should not be to see if the person will be your soulmate or your life partner. Rather, the goal is to be able to create a connection with another human being. Okay? And that can take the pressure off and can help you become open and perhaps even more curious, and to be more intentional about creating a human connection, right? Because listen to this. When you're not worried about impressing the person, or perhaps, there's lots of people there who always fantasize about the future. If you show up more authentically, right? That has more of a success, because this type of chemistry, it can take time to build. But what's important to understand is, are you having a good time? And in the end, do you want to see that person again? And that's it. Your brain might not process that it's a romantic chemistry, and it's still okay. But you can get to learn a lot of things about trying to connect with people that are not your usual partners. Another thing you should know is that lots of people think that when love relationships are intense, they think that's love. So if you had a history of dating people because you were following the initial intense chemistry, this is a signal that you are being directed on the wrong path, that this person's not for you, right? Because an intense chemistry is not a green light. It's a signal for you that you need to stop. Whatever is really, really intense, it's showing you a red flag. Because love is not a fast-paced, it's not hot and cold, it's not anxiety. Anxiety doesn't come with it, right? And it's not a roller coaster. This is the sign that's getting you to wake up, all right? So when you're experiencing intensity in relationships, take it as a signal that you need to slow down, right? And not try to achieve and speed up the results. So what happens is, with these types of intensity, it can cause you to overlook what's bad with these relationships, and you get so emotionally entangled with the other person that you don't see what's going on, and you're led to a dead-end road again. So even if, your body is signaling you that you want to see that person every single day, what you can start doing is don't see them as often. Perhaps see them once or 2 times a week. If there's such an intensity in that relationship, you shouldn't be going fast-paced, right? You need to find ways to start creating healthier habits. Another thing is when you see that somebody is showing up for you. So say you have a partner that can be compassionate, supportive, loving, that gives you attention. You need to also practice to be able to receive it. So if you had a history of dating disconnected people, so that is, again, as we said, emotionally unavailable people, you're likely used to starving for attention and love, and you as a person may be overgiving, and you might overcompensate to try to get the very thing you're lacking from the relationship. So you need to build your muscle to receive, and this can feel so uncomfortable at first. And I've been there. So when someone gives you love, whether that is a compliment, whether that is perhaps a gift, or it might be like an act of service on their behalf, just try to take the moment to soak it in, okay? Just try to feel how it feels and where you feel it in your body. And by doing this, you're building up your emotional memory of how healthy love feels.